Maine listings. My name is Brent Adams, and I'll be your trainer today for this session on Realist. But this session on Realist is a little bit different. If you were at our session last week, whereas I went through kind of really everything you needed to know in Realist last week, much of which you will see on today's session, I'm going to really focus in on the marketing features of Realist in this particular session. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and get started. You know, it's a new one for me too, so I'm just going to kind of go through every facet of Realist that I can think of where, you might find some information that might be of use to you in Realist. Now, number one, what I want to point out to you is, and here I am on the Realist homepage. By the way, I've showed you linking from your Flexmls system in the last class, so I'm going to operate under the assumption that you all know how to get to Realist since you're here at this specialized Realist class. But here, on the Realist homepage, one of the first things I want to point out to you that not everybody always realizes about Realist is over here in the search section. You notice I'm going to be doing my searches in Cumberland County, Maine. Realist is a county-based system. You need to select the county in which you want to search in order to be able to find properties, in that particular area. But as I click on Change County, notice that I have everything from Androscoggin all the way down to York, Maine. That means each and every one of you has access to every single parcel in every single county in the entire state of Maine. And that's the first thing to know when it comes down to the fact that Realist is a really good marketing tool. We're talking about properties that may have been listed through your MLS, may have never been listed through your MLS, may have never even sold ever, maybe have sold privately. Realist picks up, again, MLS sales, it picks up public record private sales, it picks up really just about anything you could ever want to see. The other thing to know about Realist when it comes to, doing your marketing is, we're only so current with your data, So whereas we bring in assessments and taxes on a regular basis, I want to point out that when I start selecting other different counties, and by the way, you can search in up to 12 counties at one time, it helps to know how current the data is in every single county. For example, in Cumberland, Maine, there's a recording date of January 26, 2026, which is roughly today being what, February 5th? We're talking about, about 10 days behind the current date. So if a property sold in Cumberland County after January 26, 2026, you're not going to find that recorded deed of sale, that mortgage, that foreclosure, or anything else, about that property, having to do with a recorded document. So just so you know, that's how current the data is in each and every one of your counties. And depending on where you're searching, that's a good thing to be able to have access to. So I'll get out of there for now. And again, I'm going to be doing, for the most part, all of my searches here in Cumberland County. Now I'm going to go down to one property. Right now, I'm just going to look at one home, and I'm going to point out the things on a property detail report, and that's the flagship report in Realist, that are going to be most important to you, that you might have, interest in when it comes to marketing these properties. So I'm going to go to this report. It's a property that I saved a while back, and I'm going to start on the property detail report because that is the biggest place to kind of dig for information about a property. One of the things, and again, you've been using Realist for a long time. You all have been Realist customers for quite a while, whether or not you've known you've had it for many years. One of the things that we've added for you, and this really directly relates into marketing, is the sales score on a property. And we've moved it up here into this property sort of summary section up here at the very top. Now, this property was listed through your MLS. I'm starting with a property that was sold through the MLS, looks like at the end of 2024, so roughly 2 years ago. By the way, just so you know about these photos, I'm going to open up some photos for you. These photos are only as recent as the most recent listing that we have associated with this property in Realist. So these are not the current photos of these properties. Don't want you to think that, someone's out there snapping photos of this particular property. But when this property sold back in 2024, and these photos are still opening, I think there's quite a few of them actually, so it does take a little bit of time to open them, but they're coming in directly from your Flex system. And they are, again, only as recent as the most recent listing we have for these properties. So keep in mind that these photos that are about to pop up, hopefully any second now, there they are roughly 2 years old. So again, there could have been updates made to this property too. So just know that what you're looking at here is from 2 years ago, since this was a sold listing. Now, you wouldn't see these photos at all, of course, if this property had never been listed through MLS. One of the first things when we're looking at individual properties, and we'll get into looking at groups of properties, is is a property owner occupied or not? Because that's really going to determine how you're going to market to these folks. Is this a rental property? Is this a vacation home of some sort? Those types of factors could really factor in to how you're going to contact this person. If you're going to mail them something, are you going to mail them, asking them if they're looking to sell this property or if they're looking to upgrade? But what you can see here is this property in particular is not owner occupied. I'm looking at a property here on 88 Codman Street, and the person who owns this property, Donald and Elizabeth here, live at 60 Eastern Promenade Apartment 1 in the same town, but they don't live in this particular property, at least as far as we can tell. We pull this information directly off the deeds. And if the primary residence of the owners of these properties don't match up to the physical address of the property we're looking at any given time, we assume it's a non-owner occupied property. And you're going to have search attributes related to that too. You're going to have search attributes that allow you to find properties that are or are not owner occupied. And also when we print out mailing labels, which we'll get to in a little bit, you're going to have the opportunity to mail to the physical addresses where these properties are, in which case, don't forget, you could be reaching renters. You could be reaching vacant homes that are not currently owner occupied. But we're also going to have the opportunity to reach the tax billing address where people live too. And that's, of course, going to be reaching the people who are potentially authorized to sell these homes, if that's the type of correspondence you're looking to send out. If you're looking to send out a just listed mailing or a just sold mailing saying, hey, I have expertise in this area. Maybe you'd like to list your property with me in the near future. Having that information about who owns this property and where they live full time is key when you're doing marketing. Now, the other thing you may have noticed that we've added to Realist in recent years is analytics. And I'm going to show you a lot of analytics that are free to you right off the bat. Realist is a free service, of course. You do pay your dues to Maine Listings, and that does factor into the fact that, of course, Maine Listing pays to bring you this service called Realist. So not completely free to you, but community insights, these types of things, these types of numbers that I'm showing you, the median home value and how we rank that, the crime risk score and how that's ranked, how many incidents per year, how the schools are doing in a particular area, whether it's a family-friendly area or a walkable area. All great information that's going to help you understand the neighborhoods that you're marketing to, and whether you're trying to market to people who live in those neighborhoods, or market to people who maybe you're looking to move into those neighborhoods. This is important information to have. However, it's very, very high level, just some basic scores, and you don't get a whole lot of information on how we calculated this. What I'm going to show you in a little bit are some reports that, while you do have to pay a little extra for, are going to be, again, they're going to show you what's going on in the entire neighborhood, and you're going to get an idea as to why some of these numbers are the way they are. So we'll be able to dig a little deeper into those in a little bit too. Now, the rest of this information I don't find particularly helpful for any sort of marketing purposes. I'm just learning information about this particular home, the location, the tax information. Assessment and taxes, always good for you to know where these assessment and taxes are going. Are they going up? Are they going down? Are they relatively static? Again, the whole idea between you marketing, for you to market to these people is that we're trying to position you, the agent, as an expert in this area. And all of you, I'm sure, have much expertise in the areas in which you sell, but we're going to give you the numbers that are going to allow you to kind of, understand, are these taxes going up? So you can understand when people are, you're trying to sell people properties in these areas, exactly where those taxes are going, if they're going up, if they're going down. Physical characteristics, again, having to do with this one individual property. I don't find these particularly helpful, but I'll show you some things that, where we can overlay these things on top of the maps that might help you sort of see a bigger picture. And I'd say the last few things that are going to be important for you, at least for these individual properties, are going to be that sales score indicator. And just to explain what that sales score indicator is to all of you, that is going to indicate the relative likelihood that a property is going to be listed for sale in the next 6 months. Not that it's necessarily going to sell, but that it will be put up for sale in the next 6 months, potentially. And you'll get these scores ranging anywhere from 0 up to 1,000, 1,000 being the highest, 0 being the lowest. And this is, when we get into actually printing out some mailing labels, one of the ways I like to market is I like to use this sales score indicator. One of my favorite marketing exercises to do is to do a just sold mailing. If I've just sold a property in a particular neighborhood, I like to look for other properties in that neighborhood with a high sales score. And then I usually imagine myself sending out a postcard or a letter, some kind of correspondence, whatever it is that you like, that says, I just sold a property in your neighborhood. Here's who I am. I've got expertise in your neighborhood. I just sold this property for a really great value, great price. And if you're someone who's looking to sell your property in the near future, then I'm the person that you want to call. So we'll get into that in a little bit, and I'll show you how you can kind of look at these sales scores again as a map overlay too, which are going to give you kind of the ability to really get a good feel for a neighborhood. But I'll show you how you can do searches, draw shapes, and find properties based on that sales score. I think that's very helpful. The other thing that we also have is an estimated value and rental trends. All these are really telling you is if this property were to sell today, what do we think it would sell for, or what do we think it would rent for? And in most of these cases too, we're going to tell you not just the value of this property. You go off to some of these other national portals, they say, here's what your property's worth. Well, basically, the property's worth what anyone's going to actually offer to buy it for at any given time. And none of us, I would say, can ever tell you with exact certainty what that property is going to sell for. However, what we'll do is we'll be honest with these values. We're going to give you a confidence score. We're going to give you a forecast standard deviation. Now, all of that is explained down here, kind of in the fine print down here at the bottom. But just to read through it in layman's terms, we think there's an 86% chance this property is going to sell between plus or minus 8% of, just over $1 million. And that range, that 8% range, is also right here in that relay VM range. That's plus or minus 8% from, just right around $1 million. So we'd love to see confidence scores of 100. We'd love to see forecast standard deviations of 0, but you won't ever see those in Realist because we're never going to tell you with 100% certainty to within the dollar what these properties are going to sell for. And same thing goes for rental trends. There's a low, there's a max, there's sort of a happy medium, and we tell you how much we think that score could potentially deviate from what we've given you too. The other thing I like to talk about when it comes to marketing is what's the history of these properties? Who's owned these properties? What have they paid for these properties before? What sort of mortgages do these people have? So moving down through listing information, here's the whole listing history for this property, which again, you're welcome to look at. From 2008, this property went from 229 to 11. It sold for, it looks like 259. It looks like in 2013, 375. So a big jump from 2011 to 2013. It gives you some history. In fact, this property, doubled, almost tripled here, when it sold between 2013 and 2024. So house prices are going up, or at least they have been going up in the recent past. This is also great information for all of you to have too. Sales history, same kind of thing. I like to look at the sales history because if I'm looking at a particular home, this is where you find sort of the most interesting nuggets about what's going on about a property. Has a property been transferred, from a name into a trust? Has there been a quit claim deed? Has someone's name been pulled off the deed? Who did these properties sell to? Who did these properties sell from? In many cases, you might be able to look at this sales history, and you might even be able to find out whether or not there's been a foreclosure on these properties before too. Or is this property currently owned by a bank? These are all things that might cause the sale price of this property, to maybe go up or go down. Is this a motivated seller? These are all good things that you can use to kind of contact people too. You can also look at mortgage information too. For example, looking at this one, if I take a look at this one, there was a property, and you're looking 10 years, 12 years in the past. No one really cares that someone bought a property for $375,000 and took out a $300,000 mortgage. However, what you might be interested in is that the fact that this property was bought 10 years ago for $990,000, and there's no mortgage that we see. Now, there could be some private lending that we're not picking up here. Odds are, though, that this property was purchased for $990,000 and probably paid in cash. So the equity history in this property is very, very high, and that's also some good information to have, depending on what kind of marketing you're going to be doing for these people too. And then you also might even find a foreclosure history section down here for a property. And I'll show you how you can search for properties that are in foreclosure as well. And that may be some kinds of people that you want to market to as well. But I think those are kind of the biggest nuggets that you can pull out of a property detail report. To me, it's where you're going to glean the most knowledge about this particular home in and of itself. The other thing I do want to show is there is a comparables report too, because it's always very helpful for you to see what's going on in the neighborhood. Now, I'm not going to go through this comparables report in a ton of detail. Probably a lot of you sat through my last class last week, and we showed you how to run a comparables report. I want to point out one of the features of this comparables report that I really like, though, and that is the fact that all these properties, and by the way, these little red icons indicate that properties have been listed through your MLS. One of the things I like about Realist being your tax and public record system is, let's come all the way down to the bottom here. Here's property, right here. I don't have a photo icon, which means I get no photos from the MLS. I don't have a sale icon. So this property was never sold through Maine listings, but this property indeed did sell in May of 2025. You can scroll over, you can get all the details about this home over here, kind of the right. You can see the assessments and everything else. But what I want to point out about this comparables report is we will pick up non-MLS sales. These could be sales through a competing MLS in your area. These could be private sales. But running a CMA and being able to get this public records information is also kind of a nice thing to have. So that's just one of the few things I wanted to point out about the comparables report too, without going into too much more detail about those. Now, next, of course, is market trends. This, again, is the sort of scratching the surface kind of bit that you get with Realist without any sort of extra charges to you. It's a very small overview, very granular overview. You're looking at a very small area that's pertinent to this property here. I think I'm in sort of, I think it was in North Portland. I could be in South Portland. I have to take a look at that again. But I just want to point out that what these are showing you are trends. So this is, again, great information for you to have about this neighborhood or about the neighborhoods that you're potentially wanting to market to as well. So what I will point out is pay attention to the numbers down here. Pay attention to sort of the sort of gray fine print down here at the very bottom. So the monthly average here, we're showing you the average closed sales. And we're also comparing it to the last 5 years as well. So again, you're going to see exactly how many sales there have been in general in November or December. So pay attention to those months because, again, it does take us a little time to compile a lot of this information. So sometimes, again, November, December, about 3 months ago, you're going to be able to pull a lot of that information. And as you see, by the way, at the 10th of every month, all these will update. So generally we update these on the 10th of every month. So that's when you'll see, this particular number jump to December's average. This is when you'll see these jump to January of this year too. By the way, you also have a little calendar icon up here at the top right-hand corner. Not sure if everybody's always aware of that, but you can go back into history and you can see, the previous year's stats too. So go back all the way into January if you want to of 2025. Or go back up to January of 2026 and compare those back and forth if you want to as well. So good information to, again, glean from these market trends. The other thing I like about these market trends is I really personally like these 12-month rolling periods. And again, keep in mind, we're only up to date as of December 25th here, at least when it comes to MLS statistics. So what we're showing you here in these charts is we are showing you the average sale price in the 3 geographic areas where this property is located. The first of which is going to be Cumberland County, and that's going to be the line in purple. The second of which is going to be Portland/South Portland, Maine. So we'll give you a metro area, and that's going to be that blue line. And then the zip code where this property is located, not sure why that didn't come up, but it's 04103. So what I'm learning about this neighborhood is this particular neighborhood where I'm at, property is kind of going for a little bit lower than the entire metro area and a little bit lower than the county as a whole, at least compared to properties that were sold through Maine listings. If you want to look at this information as it pertains to tax sales, that means that's going to include properties that were listed through and sold through your MLS or properties that were not necessarily listed and sold through your MLS. You're going to see a slightly different chart. So it's nice to compare and contrast those, back and forth. And you can also see where trends are going. So one of the more important things to look at is the same month of the prior year was up 5.1%. So you're understanding where trends are going. Are they going up? Are they going down? Now, when it comes to some of these different charts, you're going to see it's only MLS data. For example, average sale price to original list price ratio is data that we can only glean from MLS sales, original list prices through your MLS. But when it comes to price per square foot, number of sales, or changes in sales activity, you can always toggle between them. And it's really nice to see where the trends are going, because again, that may help you pinpoint some of what you're going to do when it comes to sending out some of your mailings that we're going to look at a little bit too. All right, one of the other reports that has a little bit of information, yet again, don't forget, this is all the stuff that you have right out of the box, always available for you, your neighborhood profile. This is going to give you information about the demographics in an area, which again could affect what type of correspondence you're going to be sending out to people or how you're going to be contacting people too. Is this an area that is currently experiencing growth in the past, several years? And this is all US Census data. How old are people that live in this area? Relatively young as far as I can tell. What's the average household size? Only 2 people per household, so probably not a lot of families. You got to guess in this neighborhood, we're probably looking at a lot of singles, or maybe a lot of couples, maybe childless couples too. That's again going to factor into what type of correspondence or how you're going to market to these people too. Maybe if you're only looking at people who don't have children, you're not so worried about the schools in the area potentially. And again, you get population distribution by age. You can see we max out in that 25 to 29, 35 to 39 area. I'm going to start guessing maybe these are a lot of young professionals who live in this particular neighborhood. And I'm not particularly familiar, with South Portland, but many of you probably are. Population distribution by gender, by marital status, again, is going to be helpful too. How many people are married? Again, pretty evenly spaced between married and single, so good information to have. Housing stats, you're getting an idea for what the average house sale price is, when the average house was built. Are these older homes? Are these newer homes? You're just really educating yourself about this neighborhood so that you're positioning yourself as an expert in this area, and you can write that letter. You can send out that postcard that says, hey, look, I know what you're paying in rent right now for a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom property. Maybe it's time for you to buy, Quality of life, where do people work? Is it mostly blue collar? No, this is a mostly white collar area. So again, you've got a good idea as to what the demographic makeup is of this neighborhood too. Household income, also very helpful. Looks like people are really big earners in this particular neighborhood, so they're probably going to be able to afford some bigger houses too. Again, such great information that you can gather here. Coming down, education, also nice to know. It looks like a very highly educated populace in this neighborhood too. So they have all, attained, at least maybe a graduate's degree in many cases, or at least a bachelor's degree in most cases, you can see here too. I won't get too much deeper into schools, although it is good to have sort of, a basic understanding of what's going on in the schools in the area. How have they been rated? Both by their state standardized test scores and also how people in the community feel about these schools too. And these are all kind of gathered from great schools, by the way, too. There's more information about businesses down here too, but I don't think that's quite as important for the purposes of today's marketing campaigns. What I will point out, there is a flood map. Natural disasters, hazards and risks, there are a lot more of those nowadays. If you are someone who, if you've got people in your sort of orbit who are trying to sell flood insurance, it might be helpful to have information about whether or not this area is in a flood zone too, and also we've got these premium flood maps too. I'll just download a sample report of one of these so you can kind of see what we've got here. Not probably as big of a deal here in this area, but do want to point out that not only do we give you a standard flood map, but we give you a premium flood map and also a flood risk score and a flash flood risk score. So it may be the case, if people are needing some extra flood insurance, it's a good idea to have these types of reports available for you as well. Again, just positioning you as experts in the area. Same thing goes for hazards and risks too. You get the same sort of information there about what's going on. Okay, what I want to hop to next is premium neighborhood reports. I will point out, these all do cost $9.99 per report. So if you want to get information on the economics and demographics, the real estate, the schools data, the trends and forecasts, these are some of the things that I think are going to allow you to dig deeper into some of the report information that I've already shown you in the market trends report, in the property details report. This is where you're going to get why these values are the way they are. The other thing I want to point out is when you do pay $9.99 for these, it sounds like a lot, especially when you have to pay for them for every single property. But what I do want to point out, and I'm going to start with, let's start with neighborhood trends and forecasts. I'm going to scroll down a little bit and understand that if you download this report for this particular property here in Portland, you're getting the same information as you would anywhere in this entire area that we've drawn here. So you don't need to download, this report for a property here, a property there, a property, over here. It's all going to be the same information that you're going to get. So you really only have to download this report for one property in any given neighborhood, as you can see. So if you moved out here to, Jason's Corner or Deering Center or Morrill's Corner, you might want to take a look at another report because that's a separate neighborhood from what we're looking at least the information that we've gathered here about this particular property. I think neighborhood trends and forecasts are very helpful because this is going to help you understand if this is an area where properties are rising, where properties values are going down, and you're going to understand as to whether or not you want to market in these areas and how you want to market in these areas too. So right now you can see where the values of these properties have gone over the past 25 years and where we anticipate them going, and they're starting to trend downwards. And I'll be honest, as I've looked at a lot of these reports, a lot of areas all across the nation are starting to trend downwards. Housing prices are starting to come down a little bit, or at least we're forecasting them to start coming down a little bit. Then we dig into exactly what's gone on with these values over the past 25 years and into the next 3 years. What's also nice is, again, we are trying to position you as experts in the area. What's gone on with these values as compared to the entire Portland metro area? Because again, we're talking about a very small drawn area that I showed you in that neighborhood. And how's it compare to the Portland metro area? And how does it compare to what's going on nationally? And it looks like, again, property values are starting to go down. Good information for all of you to have when it comes to all that information. Why are these values going up or down, as the case may be? The pros in this area are incomes are going up. People are making more money. It's a great looking neighborhood. There's a lot of high paying jobs in this neighborhood and people are highly educated. I was able to pull a lot of that information again from some of these reports you've already seen, but we're digging deeper here, as you can see too. Now, the other thing I've seen, a lot of properties in this neighborhood are vacant. Property values nearby are going down too. And generally the housing market outlook as we see it with totality is kind of starting to trend downwards a little bit. And that's what's pulling some of those prices down too. You can dig into so much information here. I've got so much more to get to as far as it comes to marketing, but I'm just trying to give you all the data behind the scenes, why we show you these charts and how you can educate yourself as to what's going on in these neighborhoods too. How many good jobs are there within a specific driving distance of these homes? How many people are owning more properties in this neighborhood as opposed to renting? If they are renting, how are these properties increasing in rent compared to what's going on nationally too? Again, properties are a little bit more vacant in this particular neighborhood. Always good to see crime trending downwards too. And then you get to see things like educational trends. How many college graduates are in the area? It's on the rise in this country, in this county or in this neighborhood at a much higher rate than it is across the nation. How are the schools doing? Not quite as well in this neighborhood too, but again, we discussed probably a lot of younger professionals in this neighborhood as well. Economic trends, change in per capita income, way up. Change in household income, way up compared to national averages too. And change in unemployment rate, relatively static as opposed to the nation where unemployment rates are rising currently too. Population trends, is it a growing area? How fast is it growing? In which areas is it growing faster? And then again, moving down to affordability trends, you're going to see exactly what these prices are valued at and how that compares to sort of the national averages as well. And then of course, some regional 1 and 2 year growth trends. There's a couple other reports in the same keeping with these. These are all of our premium neighborhood reports. What I'll hop to next is neighborhood economics and demographics data. Now, we've been looking at these numbers already, so we understand a lot of all this. But what you're going to get with a lot of these reports is a nice synopsis too. So you're going to get information like, hey, it's a neighborhood that's on the ocean, a bay, or an inlet. You've got amenities that are bringing locals and visitors for recreational activities to check out the scenery. You're also seeing that this property is, ranked among one of the lowest as being affected by poverty. So again, we're looking at a high dollar area. You can also see that most of the people in this neighborhood have owned a master's degree or a PhD. you know, you're seeing all the charts, and we're kind of translating all that information into, you know, again, stuff that you're going to be able to understand too. You know, again, lots of people are going to be going to different, you know, artsy types of things. This is a wealthy crowd, as you can see, that lives in this particular neighborhood. And again, these descriptions are going to be different depending on what you're looking at. Here's another one that I loved as I kind of skimmed through this earlier, that in this neighborhood, many people's commute means walking from the bedroom to the home office. 37% of residents work from home in this neighborhood. That tells me that if I'm selling a property in this neighborhood, or I'm trying to sell a property in this neighborhood, I need to play up the fact that there's an extra bonus room in this area. These people are going to need home offices. Is it in the basement? Is it in the front of the property? Are there different rooms that they can use as offices too? And then again, what's going on with the neighbors? What languages are spoken? What's the ethnicity? Again, how are people getting to work? This is, again, all the demographic information that, you know, we're trying to look at here. Is it college student friendly? Is it family friendly? You know, are there a lot of vacation homes here? Are there a lot of first-time home buyers? No, not so many, as you can tell in this particular neighborhood. What's special about this neighborhood? Is it hip? Is it walkable? Is it quiet? Is it urban? All great information for you to have too. And then of course, coming down to those same charts we looked at a minute ago, age, marital status, gender, household types too, a lot of the stuff that you're getting, again, for free in those reports in Realist earlier too. Where do people work? Looks like most in healthcare, many in education, some in retail as well. And then those commutes to work, means of transport, how many vehicles people have, that's gonna let you know whether or not people are gonna have to have a garage, or they're gonna wanna park on that on the street, and how big those garages are going to need to be. And then again, ethnic diversity, occupations. You can go through this kind of stuff forever if you want to. The last one I wanted to show you is neighborhood real estate data, just to give you an idea of the important information that you get in here. So, you know, you can see what's going on with the median real estate price here, what the average rental price is in this neighborhood. So you've already got a baseline. If you're looking to rent a property around here, or you're looking to sell a property down here, roughly what you're going to want to list that property at, or put a bid in on that property at too, because you now know the averages too. And you're getting an information about what the sizes of these properties were, when they were built, and the fact that we've come across this in several places. Vacant apartments or homes are a major fact of life in this neighborhood, 18.7%. Now that may cause you to even want to sell more properties in this neighborhood. If there's a lot of vacant properties here, then that means there's more opportunities for you too. Average home values, again, if you're someone looking for stats to back up what to list a property at, or what to put in a bid for a property at, here's everything you could ever possibly need, especially when it comes to rents, properties by bedroom, and how much they're going to cost too. Again, we're just digging deeper into all those stats I was showing you. I don't want to spend too much more time on reports. I think that's really everything you can glean from the reports, in my estimation anyway. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to start to look at some stuff here on the maps that may be helpful for you too. So let's scroll down into the map. And if you're looking at different places to potentially market to, one of the things I like to do is I like to use not change county, sorry. I like to use some of our advanced mapping features, which is something that you do all have access to as well. So these premium map features are going to show you a lot of what I've been talking about that you can glean from all those reports. But now you're going to see them visually, kind of on the map too. There's two ways to turn these on. Number one, whenever you're doing a search, you see this little premium map section, which you can roll out or roll up. And additionally, you notice it's a little window pane here. Same thing up here, you get the little window pane. So you can turn them on here, you can turn them on there. They've got these drop downs for you. All the drop downs, everything you see, in the window pane is going to be exactly the same as you see in this drop down. But if you want to get an idea, for example, about the last price these properties sold for, toggle all these on, and you're going to get sort of a general idea as to what properties sell for in this neighborhood. These blues, these greens are going to be properties in the $750 to $1 million range, to the $1 million ranges. And when you get some of these reds, some of these yellows, these are properties that are $500,000 or below. So you can even click in these individual properties themselves, and you'll actually get the values. It's another great way to find properties, by the way, just to find them on the map, click on them, and then of course see exactly what that last sale price is, or exactly what's going on with these homes too. Other things that I think are helpful. What sort of neighborhood am I in? So when I go to my county land use codes, am I in a residential neighborhood? Everything in blue is residential. Everything in yellow is commercial. So I'm in a relatively highly residential neighborhood. So I wouldn't want to waste my time, if I was in an area, like this, I'm not going to be sending out, unless I'm a commercial real estate person, I'm not going to be sending a lot of information when it comes to that. So it gives you an idea as to the makeup of this neighborhood when it comes to, certain properties and things of that nature. Other things, if I've got any mortgage brokers on with me right now, you're going to be able to see how old these mortgages are. So you can see how long people have had their mortgages. And if these people were picking up mortgages, let's say, in the past few years, rates are probably pretty high. So you might have a good idea as to whether or not these people are in a high rate mortgage, a low rate mortgage. I will say that, we do have one that will tell you mortgage rate. It's extremely difficult for Realist to pick up this information. We don't always get it. You're going to get it here and there. But it's another good way where if you see a lot of people in blue, a lot of people in green with these high mortgage rates, these may be people that are ripe for refining right now too. So that's other good ways to narrow down on a map where you might want to market to these people too. Some of the others that I really like to use here are also, again, owner occupied. How many homes are owner occupied here? How many homes are not owner occupied? And as we talked about, this is an area with a lot of people who don't live in these homes full time. Anyone in gray doesn't live in these properties full time. Anyone in green does, according to our calculations anyway. And the last couple, ownership time, property value, rent score, sales score. Again, all great things that I've shown you all these on the property detail reports. But as I turn on the sales score, for example, this is a great one. You're going to be able to see these people in blue, these people in sort of light blue, dark blue, relatively high sales scores, probably more likely to sell their properties in the near future than some of these people in yellow, as you can see too. So these are just great ways to, again, and you can do this in any neighborhood. Scroll over here, you're going to get a totally different read on things than you are in this sort of waterfront neighborhood over here. So it really is kind of just leave these on, scroll around, look for those areas, look for those pockets of properties with, again, high interest rates, high levels of absentee owners, high sales scores, because these are the people and these are the ways that you want to narrow down to kind of do your marketing. Now, one of the ways I like to do my marketing, again, is I'm going to find this property. I think it's in this general neighborhood where I was on Codman Street. Oops, I went to the property detail report. Let me get back out of there. But one of the ways I like to do my marketing is this property right here in this neighborhood. We're going to say, I just sold it. And if I just sold this property in this particular neighborhood, I may want to do a just sold mailing and see if I can drum up some more business in this area. Again, it looks like there are a lot of vacant homes. There can be some high turnover. Homes are selling for a lot of money in this area, over $1 million. I think it was about $850,000 and more. That was sort of the median. I'd love to sell properties for $850,000. So there's lots of ways to narrow down a search if you want to. For example, you've got, and let me go ahead and click on customize search over here, because depending on what you're looking for, there's all kinds of ways that you can do a search. Here are all the things you can search on. If you're looking for properties of specific types, like if you're looking for properties that are owner occupied or not, you're going to find that under owner information. You can even mail to the zip code where these people are actually living, or the address where these people are living too. So even if they're not in these properties full time, you can find where these people live and mail to them there if you want to. But these is where you can find sort of the owner information. Location, you can narrow down these searches by a particular school district if you want to. Maybe there's a prestigious school district where you want to market to, or maybe there's a specific subdivision you want to market to. That's already been added to my search over here at the left too. You can search for properties that have specific characteristics. Lots of bedrooms, not as many bedrooms. What types of properties? Apartments. Are you someone who wants to sell condos? Are you someone who wants to sell single family residential properties? These are all the ways that you can narrow down properties by the physical characteristics they may have too. You can find properties by their listing status. Maybe you're someone who wants to find properties that have gone expired recently, and you think that's an opportunity for you to take that listing for yourself potentially. There's all kinds of ways that you can do searches that way too. Sales information. Before things like the sales score, which is again added to this search already. I might have in previous times searched by sale date and found properties that haven't sold in the past 5, 10, 20 years. Because properties that haven't sold in the past 5, 10, 20 years, probably more likely to be listed for sale, or like people are going to be likely to want to list their property with me than people who bought their property last week or last month. Foreclosures and distressed sales. We haven't gotten too much into these yet, but I can show you either via search or also via the map where we can find properties that are currently owned by a bank. Those are good solicitation opportunities for you. Banks aren't in the business of holding on to these properties after they've foreclosed upon them. They're in the business of selling these properties and getting out and getting their money back. So it might help you to find properties that have recently been taken over by the bank, or have maybe been sold to a third party by the bank too. Sometimes people will do that to flip homes. And that's a lot of other information that you can very often pull off from either this search, or don't forget that sales history too. It's going to be easy for you to see if Deutsche Bank took over a property, or Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac owned a property, and then maybe somebody else called We Fix Them Up, bought that property. You can figure that they're flipping properties, and maybe they're looking for someone to list their property as well. And of course, mortgage information. You can search by all the mortgage information I showed you as overlays, all available here too as well. But the most simple way that I like to do searches is I like to do it very small. This is the neighborhood here, maybe south or north of Woodford, south of Pia Road. And I don't want to go too far west of Ocean Avenue. And of course, we've got Baxter Road here too. But you can draw your own individual shapes rather than searching by some sort of geographic, municipal area if you want to. So if I start here on Ocean and I just start clicking and clicking, and we can draw in the specific area that I want to market to. And I'll kind of make it down here to Clifton and all the way down to Woodford. Here's the area that I've chosen to market to. I sold that property. It was right around the middle of this neighborhood. And at this point, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and find properties with a high scale score. I'm doing a just sold mailing. I'm trying to drum up some more business. There's other ways that I could search, but I like to use the sales score because it takes into account much more than the last time the property sold, but what the turnover in this neighborhood is too. So there's a couple of ways you can search. Is between, is greater than. I like is greater than. I'm looking for properties with a high propensity to sell. I don't want to market to 371 people at one time now. These people aren't going to respond to my mailing necessarily. I could only be finding, I only want to find properties that are maybe going to be sold in the near future. So I'm going to put in a sales score, and you can play with this too. Put in 600. I went from 371 matches down to 143. Maybe that's still too many for me. Let's go up to 700 and see how many, let's go up to 700 and see how many properties I get. 39. Okay, kind of small. Maybe I want it to be a little bit bigger. I'll go to 675 and I'll put in it's a relatively high sales score, 52 matches. Now I've targeted my marketing campaign. I'm going to run this search, and I'm only going to find properties in the confines of this search. I do always have people say, well, hey, why is that one popping up over there? Well, the reason is because if you want to look, I barely intersected the parcel line of that property with my search. So it is including those properties. As long as you've intersected that parcel line, it's going to include them in your search there too. Now you can even hone down your list even more. There's a split, a map, a list here. I can go to a split view. Here's where you can look at these properties too, and you can see most of them have been sold through your MLS. It's always easy to see which ones haven't. You might even find ones that are actively listed for sale or that are expired. By the way, for those of you who weren't in my earlier class, red means sold. Purple means expired when you see these little dots. Orange would mean pending. That probably wouldn't be one that you'd want to be soliciting to since it's almost, for sale. And then green is for active. You might not want to solicit to those either, or not step on your fellow realtors' toes. But it's really up to you as to which one of these or how many of these you want to include or not. You can check or you can uncheck them. I just unchecked 2. I'm about to create mailing labels for 50 different people here. So when it comes to mailing labels, all you do next is come down here and click on mailing labels if you'd like to. We do only offer these 3 different Avery label formats. 3 across, 10 down, those are 5160s. 2 across 10 down, those are 5161s, and 2 across 7 down, those are 5162s. You'll be able to usually find that number at the top of any of the labels that you see kind of in Office Depot or Home Depot, or of course Amazon nowadays. I'm one who uses mixed case, that's capital and lowercase letters. I don't like to use all capitals. That's kind of like shouting your address at somebody. And don't forget, I'm doing a just sold mailing. If I am going to email or send, a snail mail to a property address, who could I be reaching knowing what I know about this neighborhood? Vacant homes or renters. I want to reach the people who are authorized to sell these homes, regardless of whether or not they live in them full time. Another couple of things that we can use. Show current owner. When you're doing an export of only about 50 people, I think show current owner is great because, if things look weird, because don't forget, trusts own these properties. LLCs own these properties. They can be odd ways to mail to people. If you're mailing something to John Smith, it's kind of weird sometimes to mail something to the John Smith Living Trust or John Smith LLC if that's who owns these properties. So in the case where you're doing large mailings, and by the way, the maximum number of mailing labels you can ever do at one time is 3,000. That's a lot. But you could, if you wanted to, put your own custom label if you want to. One of the things I do is show current owner and then put in or current resident, just in case we don't have it right. You could also just take that current owner off completely and say something like, hey, future home seller, and that's, or hey neighbor, anything you want, and that'll be at the top of every single one of your labels rather than the names of the individual people that own those properties. I don't know about you, but the or current resident ones kind of usually go on the circular file for me, so that's not one I necessarily recommend, but you can put that on there too. Now, we'll include foreign addresses. One of the things I read about this neighborhood is you got a lot of Canadians in this neighborhood too, potentially. There's probably a lot of crossover. You're close to the border. There could be some Canadians that own properties in Portland. So you can include those foreign addresses if you want to. And I like eliminate duplicate labels too. If I come across a landlord that owns 10 different properties, I'm going to look really silly if I send that landlord 10 pieces of identical mail, for every property that he owns. Or a builder. A lot of times you're going to be soliciting builders and they may own entire tracts of homes. You may just want to send the one envelope, the one piece of correspondence for all the properties that that builder or that landlord owns. And that eliminate duplicate labels will take care of that for you in the background. Now, each of you are allowed 5,000 exports per person per month, and they do reset at the beginning of each calendar month. And when you go ahead and create these, so all that, I've gotten all my knowledge about this neighborhood. I have drawn my little shape. I've looked for properties with a high propensity to sell. And as I open up my labels, I'm now ready to create my own marketing campaign. Let's open those up. And they open up in a .rtf file extension, by the way. That means, stands for rich text format. If you're using Word, they'll open in Word, as it did for me. If you use WordPerfect, they'll open in WordPerfect. If you use Pages, they'll open there too. Now you're seeing I'm coming up with all these people who live in these properties in Portland themselves, but I'm also coming up with people who own these properties that live in Brooklyn or in Massachusetts. Or as I come down a little bit further, let's see, we got a lot of people in Portland. There's someone in Wesley Hills. There's someone in Newport, Rhode Island who owns a property in this neighborhood. So you're getting the idea as to the fact that people live in different areas and own these properties, and they may rent them out, and that may affect, again, the type of correspondence or the way you want to market to these people too. So that's creating your own personal mailings. That's you just doing it and going ahead and printing out all these labels. Again, having some sort of envelope and some sort of letter or a postcard or something else that someone else has created for you and sending these out on your own. What I also want to point out is you can export this information into a spreadsheet if you want to as well. This is great for people who might be using a mailing house if you want to. So quick export will export everything you see here in my grid all the way across: city, zip code, listing status, everything else. And it'll export it into a spreadsheet for every property you have checked. I like to go to customize export because if we're talking about doing sort of marketing, what I want to do is I only want to market, I want to send off maybe this to someone else to do my mailing for me, like a Real Mailers or somebody like that. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go to the owner information, and I'm going to put on the male owner first name. Then I'm going to break it down: owner first name, owner middle name, owner last name. Let's put the second owner name on there too. Then you can put that second owner first name, middle name, and last name. Oh, here I can add regular owner name. Here I can even drag these too, because you can see every time I add them, they get sort of added over here in this area. And maybe after owner name, I can put it right there. So if you like them in multiple columns or just one column per name, you can do that too. You can export whether or not these properties, well, let's actually first go to tax billing address, where these people live full time. Tax billing city and state. Well, we'll do city first, then city and state, then zip, zip +4, mailing carrier route, whether or not the property was owner occupied as well, and if they're on the do not mail list. We'll talk about that in a little bit too. Once you've done this, you can save this as a template. I'm going to call this my owner mailing export, and I'm going to save it. And that way I can use this again and again and again. And now when I go to export this, virtually everything that you saw on my Word document with my labels is now here in a spreadsheet. So this is how you export this information out of Realist, whether it's in label format or whether it's in spreadsheet format. And now you've got all the owners, you've got their names, again, out here in individual columns. If you're someone who knows how to do what we call a mail merge, you could create your own form letter from here. Dear Sarah Green, who lives at 94 Woodford Street, I see you bought your property back in 2014 when interest rates were incredibly high. Might be time for you to refi. I see you live in your property full time. Prices have never been higher. It's a great time to sell. And let me give you all the information I have behind the fact that I know property values are going up, or I know property values are going down. It's time for you to dump this property, or it's time for you to buy a new property. You can find property, people who own multiple properties. Are you looking for more investment properties? And I've already given you all those reports, all those sections, all that data, so that you can back up your claims about whatever you're looking to sell to these folks. Again, if you're an appraiser, if you're a salesman, if you're selling properties, if you're someone who's selling insurance, or if you know any of these people, all this is great data. You're finding out all the information you can about this neighborhood. You're narrowing it down to the people you specifically want to market to. And again, it takes a while to dig through all of this. You do have to find out when these people bought their homes. Do they own multiple homes? You can find out all that information, and that's going to affect the way you market people. And when you do market to those people, don't forget, you've got all the information you need to mail to them, and also to, again, back up your claims about anything you want to too. I mean, that's really, I've kept you a little bit extra here. That's the majority of everything I wanted to show you really about doing marketing via Realist. There are a couple of other map tools that may be helpful for you. I will point out a few things. For example, here, let's clear all this out. One of the ones I do want to show you, because we didn't get too deep into it, is foreclosures. There may be some of you out here who are into finding distressed sales, or maybe marketing to people whose properties may be in foreclosure. We've got foreclosure stage. I think that's an important one. We've got distressed sales. We've also got foreclosure auction dates too. Now you can combine those with things like where these properties are located, what city, what subdivision, what street. And now you've created yourself a little foreclosure search, and you can save that. So now when you go into Realist and do some searches, you can find properties potentially that are scheduled to go to auction. How many of these are we going to find? 14. Now also what you can do is you can even find properties that are scheduled to go to auction at a date maybe past today's date, 2/5/2026. How many do we get there? 2. So only 2 properties out of those 14 in this county are scheduled to go to auction in the next couple of weeks. And as I kind of click on one, I'll open up this report. And when you find properties that are in some sort of foreclosure, generally we're collecting that information from a document too. So I'll go to this foreclosure deed, And here's a notice of sale that was posted on this property back in January 15th of 2026. This property is scheduled to go to auction March 3rd at 11 a.m. at what I'm going to guess is your county courthouse. These could be other solicitation opportunities for you. Again, this property is about to go to auction. Someone would probably like to sell it before it goes to auction too. Not being familiar with all your foreclosure laws, but you've got an entire foreclosure history. When was the notice of sale posted? When was the list pendants posted? So you've got a lot of information about foreclosures too. The other ones I really like to show are, let me scroll down here and see if I can find a few, because you don't necessarily have to search for these. You can put this information on top of these individual parcels too. So here's a property in pre-foreclosure. I showed you one that was scheduled to go to auction. Here's one where just a list pendants has been filed on this property. As I click into this one and I go into foreclosures, you're going to see a list pendants was filed on this property. So someone hasn't paid their mortgage yet, but we haven't gotten to the point where this property is scheduled to go to auction yet. So this is also good information for you to have. And maybe, again, properties that you may want to solicit individually. Here, let me clear that out and get back down to kind of South Portland here, because it's kind of where there's a lot more stuff going on. But let's see if I get a couple other things popping up here for me. Other ways to find sort of distress sales. Everything I've showed you as far as auctions, and also we were looking at the pre-foreclosures. Those are coming from direct sales. Another way that you can narrow down properties is, here's a property that was sold to a third party from the bank. So if I click on the report here, this didn't come from any sort of document. We don't have any sort of, oh, I didn't get a property detail report for that one. That's interesting. Sorry about that. Let's see if I can find another one, or even one that's currently owned by the bank. Sometimes you got to scroll out just a little bit. Not too much foreclosure action going on in this neighborhood, which is also a good sign. Not too many foreclosures, but that may not be the case in some of these other neighborhoods. Here's Sarah Weinstein. Let me open this one up. But let me show you where we collect this from. So Sarah owns this property, but the reason we're calling it a bank-owned sale is because she purchased it from something called RMAC Trust Series 2016. That sounds, to me, like this property was likely in foreclosure. And as I scroll down lower, lo and behold, it was. There was a list pendants filed on this property back in 2021, and now, of course, that final judgment was in 2024. She purchased the property right after that from this mortgage, what looks like a mortgage company to me, and probably got a pretty good deal on that property too, and maybe looking to flip it. And that's a lot of these people that buy these properties from banks are fixing them up, getting them at a low price, fixing them up and flipping them, and those could be people that you want to market to as well. I think that was really the last thing I wanted to show you. I mean, of course, there are ways to look at things on the map that are also very helpful. I've been showing you distressed properties. We can turn those off. You can also just get a good look at, hey, what's going on in this neighborhood? How many properties are listed through our MLS? How many properties have been sold recently through our MLS? How many are pending? How many are expired? So you can kind of canvass the neighborhood and get a good idea as to what's been going on, in potentially the past 3, 6, 9, 12 months when it comes to expired or sold properties, or what's going on with those active or pending properties too. It's even helpful sometimes, if you're looking to get, or find only people that are in 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom properties, you can actually place the property characteristics right on top of these too. Let me turn off some of these MLS statuses. And you can, for example, see, hey, what's the bedroom and bathroom count on all these properties? Here's a 4-bedroom, a 6-bedroom, another 2-bedroom. It's kind of all over the map in this neighborhood. It doesn't appear to be very uniform. Could be anywhere from 8 bedrooms, and next door you got a property with 3 bedrooms. But you can narrow these down, and it's just another visual way to look at what's going on in these properties too. And then lastly, and I don't find this one particularly helpful, but I can show you that you can look at these larger overarching trends too. Where are we selling more properties? Where are we selling less properties? As I scroll out even more, hopefully I'll find some colors here. But what you'll start to see is areas in yellow. Yeah, I know we're kind of almost all the way down to Boston here, but you can see we're selling a lot more properties in specific zip codes as opposed to others too. By the way, when you put these overlays on top of these maps, hold down Control and click, And you can see exactly how many properties did sell in these neighborhoods over the past X months, in this case, 3 months as of December 2025. So it's just a good way to, again, understand that, are you in an area where properties are selling? Are you in an area where properties aren't selling? May help you target your marketing as well, kind of using some of these map overlays. All right, folks, I think I've showed you everything. Really, I tried to dig down into everything that I think would even be of just, minimal use to you on the reports. I've also tried to show you again how you can really kind of take a look at a geographical area from a 30,000 foot view as well, with some of these overlays on the maps. And of course, I've showed you how to finally export, pinpoint some of this marketing, and then export either things into spreadsheets or export things into labels for you to be able to do those sort of that sort of marketing on your own too. With that said, I did keep you. I've never done this class before. This is a new one for me, so I did go for an hour. Maybe I'll offer it for an hour next time. But I hope you took something out of it. Realist is your tax and public record system. Most people are just sitting there in Flex and they say, oh, I need to find out the taxes about this property, or I need to find out something about this one property. And that's why 90% of the people go into Realist, just to find something about one home. That's why we've got this quick search section that it just allows you to find what's going on at a certain address, or someone who owns a property, or that particular listing. But as I've kind of shown you, there's so many ways that you can create custom searches to find the properties that specifically interest you, because you want to market to them, because you want to sell those properties. There's so many ways to build custom searches for our power users that are going to find these groups of homes that they either want to market to, or pull some stats on, or just get a deeper understanding as to what's going on in your area. So don't forget, there are those great reports. I know they do cost a little bit extra, but you're getting information about entire neighborhoods too. All right, I'll let you go. I've prattled on enough. Have a great weekend. Folks, get into Realist. Play around with it. It's so much more than just a tax and public record system. I hope you really did enjoy today's session, and I hope you got a little something out of it. Take care, and we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.